The mining station orbited the red dwarf star in silence. Inside, 243 people worked their shifts, extracting rare minerals from the asteroids that drifted through the Proxima Centauri system. It was boring work far from Earth, but it paid well. Most of the miners were saving money to buy homes back on Earth or Mars. Some were running from bad memories. Others just liked the quiet of space. Sarah Chen was in the cafeteria drinking coffee when the alarm started screaming. She dropped her cup and ran to the nearest window. What she saw made her blood freeze. Ships, huge ships, 12 of them, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They were dark purple and covered in strange symbols that glowed with a sickly green light. The ships didn't look like they belonged in the same universe as human technology. They were wrong somehow, like looking at a predator that had evolved on a different world. "What are those?" Someone whispered behind her. Sarah didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat had closed up with fear. The station's communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke, but it wasn't human. It sounded like rocks grinding together, like metal scraping against metal. The words came through a translator that made them flat and emotionless. Submit or perish, that was all. 3 words. No explanation. No negotiation. No chance to respond. The lead ship fired. The weapon didn't look like anything from human science fiction. There was no bright laser beam, no glowing plasma bolt. Space just seemed to twist and tear, and then the entire mining station was ripping apart. Metal screamed. Air rushed out into the void. People who had been drinking coffee or playing cards or sleeping were suddenly exposed to vacuum. Sarah Chen didn't feel the impact that killed her. She died instantly when the section she was in exploded. So did the 242 other people on the station. The alien ships didn't stay to confirm the kill. They simply moved on, deeper into human space, leaving debris and frozen bodies floating in the dark. On Earth, in the emergency session of the United Earth Assembly, the mood was dark. The holographic display at the center of the room showed the destruction on repeat. 243 faces appeared on the screens around the walls. Men and women of all ages, all backgrounds, all dead. They didn't even wait for a response, said Admiral James Park. His voice was tight with controlled rage. They came into our space, destroyed a civilian target, and broadcast a demand. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. Do we know anything about them? Asked Secretary General Elena Rodriguez. She looked tired, like she'd aged 10 years in the past few hours. The linguistics team analyzed the transmission, said Dr. Michael Torres, head of the xenoanthropology department. The language structure suggests a hierarchical society. The word they used for submit has connotations of permanent subservience. This isn't a negotiation. They're telling us to become slaves or die. Can we fight them? Asked the Chinese representative. Admiral Park pulled up tactical data. We scrambled every ship we could from the Proxima Defense Fleet. 8 military vessels. They engaged the alien fleet 3 hours ago. And, Park's jaw clenched, 6 of our ships are gone. 2,000 personnel. We destroyed 3 of their ships before they retreated. The remaining 2 vessels are limping back to Proxima Station. The room erupted in shocked voices. Humanity had lost 75% of the force they'd sent. But they'd also killed 3 alien ships. That meant something. They can be killed, said the Russian representative quietly. Everyone stopped talking and looked at him. We hurt them, they ran. That means they can die just like anyone else. Admiral Park nodded slowly. Our weapons work. Their shields aren't perfect. They're more advanced than us, yes, but not invincible. Captain Morrison's report before she died said their ships are faster, and their weapons hit harder. But our nuclear missiles got through. Our railguns penetrated their hulls. We just need more ships and better tactics. How long before they come back? Asked the Secretary General. Unknown. Could be weeks. Could be months. But they will come back. Species like this don't give up after one setback. They'll analyze what went wrong, adapt, and return with more force. The Indian representative stood up. Then we need to prepare. We need every shipyard working at maximum capacity. We need every weapons lab developing new technology. We need to be ready. Agreed, said Secretary General Rodriguez. But first we need to make a decision. Do we try to negotiate or do we prepare for war? The British representative laughed bitterly. Negotiate? They killed 243 civilians without warning. They demanded our surrender before we even knew they existed. What exactly would we negotiate? Our survival, said the French representative. Maybe we can find common ground. Maybe this is all a cultural misunderstanding. No, said Admiral Park. Everyone looked at him. He stood up slowly, his uniform crisp despite the long hours. I've been a soldier for 30 years. I know what this is. This is a predator species that's used to easy prey. They came here expecting us to roll over. When we fought back, they retreated to regroup. But they will return and they'll bring more force. The only question is whether we'll be ready. You're suggesting total war, said the German representative. I'm suggesting survival, Park replied. They struck first. They killed our people. Every minute we spend debating is a minute they're using to prepare. We need to make a choice right now. Do we fight or do we surrender? The room fell silent. On the screens, the faces of the dead stared down at them. Sarah Chen smiled in her ID photo. She'd been 28 years old. She'd been planning to return to Earth next year to marry her boyfriend. Now she was frozen meat floating in space. Secretary General Rodriguez stood up. All in favor of full military mobilization in a state of war with the hostile alien force? Vote now. Every hand in the room went up. Not one person abstained. Then it's unanimous, Rodriguez said quietly. We're at war. The surviving alien ships limped back to their home territory. On the bridge of the lead vessel, Fleet Commander Zekthor watched his screens with what humans would recognize as shock. He had lost 3 ships, against a primitive species that shouldn't have been able to scratch his shields. Analysis, he growled to his tactical officer. Their weapons are crude but effective, Commander. Kinetic projectiles accelerated by magnetic rails, primitive fusion warheads, chemical rockets for propulsion. By our standards, they're using technology that's at least 500 years out of date. And yet they destroyed 3 of our ships. They fought with desperation, Commander. And they used tactics we didn't expect. They sacrificed their ships to get close to ours. They accepted losses that no civilized species would tolerate. Zekthor made a grinding sound that was the Vraxian equivalent of a thoughtful hum. In his 400 years of life, he had participated in the conquest of 17 species. Not one of them had fought back effectively. Most had surrendered after the demonstration. A few had fought briefly, then accepted their place in the Confederacy. These humans were different. What is their population? He asked. Approximately 10 billion on their homeworld. Another 2 billion scattered across their solar system. They have colonies on 3 planets and 17 moons. Military capability? Limited. They have approximately 500 military spacecraft, mostly small patrol vessels and cargo haulers converted for combat. Their technology is primitive. They have no shield technology. Their power generation is based on fusion reactors. They've only just begun experimenting with faster-than-light travel. Zekthor felt reassured. Then this was an anomaly. We underestimated them because we thought they were weaker than they are, but they're still primitives. We'll report to the Council. They'll authorize a proper invasion force and we'll crush them. And if they've improved by the time we return? Asked the tactical officer. Zekthor laughed, a sound like rocks falling down a mountain. Improve? In what? A few months? It takes centuries to advance technology. They might build more ships, but they'll be using the same primitive weapons. We'll adapt our shields to their kinetic weapons and nuclear missiles. Next time, they won't even scratch our hulls. The tactical officer seemed satisfied with this answer. But deep in his mind, Zekthor felt a small worm of doubt. Something about the way the humans had fought bothered him. They'd adapted their tactics in the middle of the battle. When their missiles failed against shields, they'd switched to ramming attacks. When those failed, they'd used nuclear mines. Each tactic had been different, creative, desperate. Most species fought the same way from the beginning of a battle to the end. They had doctrine and strategy, and they stuck to it even when it wasn't working. The humans had changed their approach 5 times in a 4-hour battle. What would they do with 6 months to prepare? Zekthor pushed the thought away. It didn't matter. The Vraxian Confederacy had conquered 47 star systems. They'd subjugated dozens of species. They had technology that made them gods compared to these humans. A few clever tactics wouldn't save a primitive species from the full might of the Confederacy. He began preparing his report to the Council. Hostile species encountered. Designation, humans. Technology level, primitive. Military capability, minimal but aggressive. Recommendation, Full invasion force of 200 vessels. Estimated time to total conquest, 2 weeks. He didn't add his private thoughts. He didn't mention the worm of doubt. He was a fleet commander of the Vraxian Confederacy. Doubt was weakness, and weakness was death. On Earth, the mobilization began immediately. Every shipyard in the solar system shifted to military production. Civilian construction stopped. Luxury items disappeared from stores as factories retooled for war production. Scientists who had been studying asteroid mining or fusion efficiency were reassigned to weapons development. In a bunker deep beneath the Swiss Alps, the brightest minds in human science gathered for an emergency conference. Dr. Sarah Kim, head of the Advanced Weapons Division, stood before a holographic display showing schematics of the alien ships. "We have debris from the 3 ships we destroyed," she said, "and we have sensor data from the battle. Here's what we know." The display zoomed in on the alien hull material. "Their armor is a carbon-titanium composite we've never seen before. It's strong, but it's not indestructible. Our railguns punch through at close range. That means kinetic weapons work." "What about their shields?" asked a physicist from India. "That's where it gets interesting," Dr. Kim said. The display changed to show energy readings. Their shields are some kind of electromagnetic field that deflects or absorbs incoming projectiles. But they have a refresh rate. After they block a hit, there's a tiny gap, maybe a tenth of a second, where they're weak. Our computers are too slow to exploit it, but if we developed better targeting AI, we could time our shots to hit during the weak point, finished a programmer from Japan. "I can write that algorithm." "Good, do it. Next, their weapons." The display showed the strange space twisting effect. "We have no idea how this works. It's not plasma, it's not lasers, it's not kinetic. Our best guess is they're creating temporary gravitational shears. We can't replicate it and we can't shield against it with current technology. But we did notice something." She played the battle footage in slow motion. "Their weapons have incredible range, but they take time to charge. About 5 seconds between shots from each weapon mount. That means if we can close the distance quickly, we can get inside their firing cycle." "That's suicide," said an admiral. "Our ships aren't fast enough." "Then we make them faster," Dr. Kim said firmly. "We strip everything non-essential. No luxury quarters, no recreational facilities, no comfort. Just weapons, engines, and life support. We build ships that are fast and disposable." "You're talking about turning our people into missiles," someone said. "No," Dr. Kim said quietly. "I'm talking about giving them a chance to kill the enemy before the enemy kills them. Right now, we're in a knife fight with someone who has a gun. We need to close the distance and make it a brawl." The room was silent for a moment. Then the admiral nodded. "How long?" 6 months for the first new ships. 3 months if we cut corners and accept higher risk." "Cut the corners. Risk doesn't matter if we're all dead." Around the world, similar conversations were happening. Weapons scientists were working on new missiles, new railguns, new tactics. Military strategists were studying the battle footage frame by frame, looking for weaknesses. Psychologists were trying to understand the alien mindset. Linguists were analyzing the 3-word message, trying to learn everything they could about the enemy. And in her office, Secretary General Rodriguez sat alone, looking at the faces of the 243 dead. She had authorized total war. She had bet humanity's future on the belief that they could win against a superior enemy. She picked up a pen and wrote a single sentence in her diary. "They think we're weak. They think we'll break. They have no idea what humans do when we're cornered." She closed the book and went back to work. There was a war to win, and humanity would either triumph or die. There would be no surrender. There would be no second chance. The aliens had struck first, and they would learn what that meant. They would learn that humans don't repeat their mistakes, and they don't forget. 6 months had passed since the first attack. 6 months of humanity working harder than it had ever worked before. The shipyards around Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies ran 24 hours a day. The lights never went off. The factories never stopped. People worked in shifts, sleeping in bunks near their stations, eating meals in 5 minutes, then going back to work. Dr. Sarah Kim hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night in half a year. Her team had tested 73 different weapon designs. 60 of them had failed. 10 had killed the test pilots. 3 had worked. She stood now in the weapons testing facility orbiting Jupiter, watching through thick reinforced glass as a new laser cannon charged up. The weapon was brutal in its simplicity. It took every bit of power from a ship's reactor and focused it into a single beam of coherent light. It could only fire 3 times before the reactor needed to cool down, but each shot carried enough energy to boil a lake. "Fire," she ordered. The laser lanced out across space, invisible except where it intersected with test debris. A chunk of asteroid the size of a building simply ceased to exist. The rock didn't explode. It didn't melt. It vaporized instantly, turned into plasma by temperatures that matched the surface of a star. "Beam cohesion?" she asked. "Perfect, Doctor. No dispersion at effective combat range. Recharge time? 20 seconds. Much better than the previous design." Dr. Kim allowed herself a small smile. It was the first smile she'd had in 6 months. "Install it on all new ships. Retrofit the existing fleet as fast as possible." She moved to the next testing bay. Here, engineers were working on magnetic acceleration cannons. These weren't like the old railguns. These used superconducting magnets to accelerate projectiles to 10% of light speed. At that velocity, even a small piece of metal carried kinetic energy equivalent to a nuclear bomb. "Problems?" she asked the lead engineer. "Just one, Doctor. At these speeds, friction with stray atoms in space creates heat. The projectiles melt before they reach the target. Solution? We coat them in an ablative shell that burns away, protecting the core." "Works perfectly. We tested it an hour ago." "Show me." The engineer ran the test footage. A small tungsten rod no bigger than a baseball shot from the cannon. It crossed 1,000,000 kilometers in 30 seconds and hit a derelict spaceship that humanity had towed into the testing zone. The ship didn't just break apart. The kinetic impact was so violent that the entire vessel converted to plasma. Where a ship had been, there was now only an expanding cloud of superheated gas. "That'll do," Dr. Kim said. "Production immediately." She checked her watch. The Vraxian fleet was coming. Intelligence estimated they'd arrive in 3 weeks. Every day mattered. Every hour mattered. Every minute humanity had was spent building weapons, training soldiers, and preparing for a battle that would decide whether their species survived. In Vraxian space, Fleet Admiral Krovex stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the armada he commanded. 200 ships. The largest fleet the Confederacy had assembled in 3 generations. Enough firepower to crack planets and boil oceans. He felt confident. The analysis of the human weapons had been thorough. He knew their capabilities now. He knew their limitations. His shields had been calibrated to deflect their primitive kinetic weapons. His armor had been reinforced against their nuclear missiles. His ships were faster, stronger, and carried more firepower than the entire human fleet combined. "Status of the invasion force?" he asked his second-in-command. "All ships report ready, Admiral. Troop transports are loaded with occupation forces. We have enough soldiers to hold their major cities once their military is destroyed." "And the demonstration weapon?" "Armed and ready, sir. Once we destroy their military, we'll use it on one of their smaller colonies. They'll see what happens to species that resist. Then they'll surrender." Krovex nodded. It was standard Confederacy procedure. Crush the military, destroy a city or two to break morale, then accept surrender. By this time next month, humanity would be another subject species, working in Vraxian factories and mines. Their homeworld just another resource to be exploited. All ships prepare for jump to human space. We go to war. 200 ships activated their faster-than-light drives. Space folded, twisted, and they vanished, traveling in seconds across distances that would take light years to cross. When they emerged, they were at the edge of the solar system. Earth's sun was a bright dot in the distance. Sensors immediately picked up human ships. Lots of them. How many? Krovex demanded. "Counting now, sir. 50, 75. 120. "Admiral, they have at least 200 ships." Krovex felt a moment of surprise. 200 ships in 6 months? Impossible. No species could build that fast. They're not all military grade, the sensor officer continued. Most appear to be converted civilian vessels. Cargo haulers with weapons attached. Mining ships with armor plating. They're desperate, Admiral. They've converted everything they have. Krovex relaxed. Desperation meant weakness. It meant humanity had thrown everything into this one defense. When he crushed this fleet, they'd have nothing left. All ships advance. Destroy everything! The Vraxian armada moved forward like a purple tidal wave. Their weapons charged. Their shields glowed with power. This would be a massacre, and the humans would learn what it meant to defy the Confederacy. The human fleet spread out, forming a loose sphere around the approaching Vraxian ships. It was a strange formation. Krovex had never seen anything like it. "They're trying to surround us," his tactical officer said. "But they don't have the numbers. We'll simply blast through them. Do it." All ships fire at will. The Vraxian weapons activated. Space twisted and tore. The gravitational shear weapons reached out across thousands of kilometers, designed to rip the human ships apart just like they'd destroyed the mining station 6 months ago. But the human ships didn't rip apart. They had new shields. Not the same technology as Vraxian shields, but something different. Magnetic fields that deflected the gravitational weapons just enough to keep the ships intact. The fields didn't stop the weapons completely. Ships still took damage. Hulls still buckled. But they didn't explode. They didn't tear apart like paper. And then the humans fired back. The lasers came first. Dozens of brilliant beams lanced across space, focused on individual Vraxian ships. The beams didn't just hit, they burned. Vraxian shields, calibrated to stop kinetic projectiles and deflect missiles, did almost nothing against concentrated light. The lasers punched through and struck armor. Metal boiled. Hulls breached. Atmosphere vented into space. Shields are ineffective against directed energy weapons. Someone screamed on the Vraxian command channel, adjusting shield frequency. The adjustment took time the humans didn't give them. Before the Vraxian shields could adapt, the second wave hit. The magnetic acceleration cannons fired. The tungsten rods coated in their ablative shells crossed the distance in seconds. They hit Vraxian ships at 10% of light speed, and the impacts were catastrophic. Kinetic energy converted to heat and shock waves. Ships crumpled like aluminum cans. Some simply vanished in expanding clouds of vapor. "Evasive action!" Krovex roared. All ships evasive. The third wave was the worst. The smart mines activated. Humanity had seeded them throughout the battle space. Small autonomous weapons with basic AI and explosive charges. They'd been floating dormant, waiting. Now they came alive, using tiny thrusters to intercept Vraxian ships. The mines were too small for ship weapons to target effectively. They swarmed like angry insects. The mines attached themselves to Vraxian hulls and detonated. Each explosion was small, but there were hundreds of mines. Thousands. They targeted weapon mounts, engine ports, sensor arrays, anything that looked vulnerable. Even when they didn't destroy a ship, they crippled it, leaving it blind and helpless. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, only 31 Vraxian ships remained, and most of those were damaged. 169 ships had been destroyed. Almost 20,000 Vraxian soldiers were dead. The human fleet had lost 15 ships. 15. On his crippled flagship, Krovex stared at his screens in shock. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be happening. 6 months ago, humans had been fighting with primitive weapons. Now they had lasers that burned through shields, kinetic weapons that hit like asteroids, and autonomous mines that hunted ships. "How?" he whispered. "How did they advance so fast?" His tactical officer, injured but alive, looked at him with the Vraxian equivalent of terror. "They learned, Admiral. They studied our ships. They saw our weaknesses, and they built weapons specifically to exploit those weaknesses. That's not possible. Technology doesn't advance that fast. It takes decades, centuries. Apparently not for humans, sir." A transmission came through from one of the human ships. A woman's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, but there was steel in her eyes. "Fleet Admiral Krovex. I'm Admiral Jennifer Morrison of the United Earth Navy. I survived your first attack on Proxima Station by luck. My ship was on patrol when you murdered 243 civilians. I've spent the last 6 months making sure I'd be ready when you came back." Krovex said nothing. What could he say? "You're going to retreat now," Morrison continued. "You're going to go back to your Confederacy, and you're going to tell them what happened here. Tell them we're not like the other species you've conquered. Tell them we learn. Tell them we adapt. And tell them that if they come back, we'll be even more ready than we were today. The Confederacy will never accept this defeat," Krovex said, finding his voice. "We will return with a force that—" Yeah, Morrison interrupted. "You'll return with overwhelming force. You'll crush us. You'll make us pay. We've heard it all before. 6 months ago, you came here to demonstrate your power. Today, we demonstrated ours. If you want to come back and learn the lesson a third time, be our guest. We'll be waiting." The transmission cut off. The human fleet began moving away, leaving the crippled Vraxian ships floating in space. They didn't even bother finishing off the survivors. It was a message: "You're not worth the ammunition." Krovex ordered his surviving ships to retreat. As they jumped away, he composed a message to the Confederacy Council. His hands shook as he recorded it. "Council members, I must report a complete disaster. The humans have advanced far beyond our predictions. They possess weapons we've never encountered, directed energy weapons that bypass our shields, kinetic weapons that strike with incredible force, autonomous systems that hunt our ships. I strongly recommend immediate negotiations for peace. I do not believe we can win a war against this species." He knew what the council would say. They would call him a coward. They would say the Confederacy had never surrendered, never negotiated, never backed down. They would send another fleet, bigger and more powerful, and the humans would be waiting, with new weapons and new tactics, ready to teach the Confederacy another lesson. For the first time in his long life, Krovex felt something he'd never experienced before: fear. Not fear of dying in battle, that was honorable. Fear of facing an enemy that learned from every mistake, that adapted faster than should be possible, that turned every defeat into a lesson, and every lesson into a weapon. The humans didn't fight like the other species. They didn't follow patterns. They didn't repeat themselves. Every time you faced them, they were different, better, more dangerous. How did you defeat an enemy like that? On Earth, the celebration was brief. Yes, they'd won. Yes, they'd destroyed most of the Vraxian fleet. But everyone knew this wasn't over. In the bunker beneath the Alps, Dr. Sarah Kim was already planning the next generation of weapons. The Vraxians would come back. They had to. A species didn't build an empire by giving up after one defeat. "What do we do now?" asked one of her engineers. Dr. Kim pulled up projections on her screen. "We keep improving. The lasers need better cooling systems. The kinetic cannons need faster reload times. The mines need better AI. We have maybe a year before they return. We need to use every second." "You think a year will be enough?" Dr. Kim looked at the battle footage, watching human ships dodge and weave through Vraxian fire, watching the lasers burn through enemy armor, watching the enemy retreat. "A year ago, we were mining asteroids and worrying about retirement savings. 6 months ago, we built lasers and railguns from scratch. Today, we destroyed the largest fleet the Vraxians have ever sent. If we have a year," she smiled grimly, "God help them. Because we won't." Around the world, humanity prepared for the next round. They knew the Vraxians would come back. They knew the next fleet would be larger, more powerful, more determined. They also knew that humans had one advantage the Vraxians didn't understand. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't weapons or technology. It was the ability to learn from mistakes and make sure they never repeated them. The Vraxians had attacked twice now. Both times, humanity had been ready with new tactics and new weapons. If the Vraxians came a third time, they would find something they'd never encountered before. They would find that humans didn't just learn from their own mistakes. They learned from their enemies' mistakes, too. And they never forgot. 1 year after the second battle, the Vraxian Confederacy Council met in emergency session. The vast chamber was filled with representatives from all 47 conquered species. Most were silent, watching the proceedings with careful neutrality. A few looked hopeful. Rumors had spread about the defeats at human hands, and some subject species were wondering if the Confederacy might finally have met its match. Supreme Council leader Vorthax stood at the center of the chamber. He was ancient, even by Vraxian standards over 600 years old, and he had overseen the conquest of 30 systems personally. He had never negotiated, he had never compromised, and he was not about to start now. "Fleet Admiral Krovex," he said, his voice amplified through the chamber. "You request that we negotiate with the humans. You suggest we accept defeat. Explain." Krovex stood before the council, knowing his career and possibly his life depended on his next words. "Supreme Leader, the humans are unlike any species we've encountered. They advance technologically at a rate that should be impossible. They learn from every engagement and adapt faster than we can counter. In 2 battles, they've destroyed over 70% of our forces sent against them. Because you were incompetent, Vorthax said coldly. With respect, Supreme Leader, no. I followed standard doctrine. I used overwhelming force. The humans simply changed. Between our first and second attack, they developed entirely new weapon systems. They studied our tactics and built counters specifically designed to defeat us. Then we will study their tactics and build counters to their counters. We have, Supreme Leader. For a year, our best scientists have analyzed every second of the battles. We've reverse-engineered their laser technology. We've adapted our shields. We've improved our weapons. I am confident that with sufficient force, we can defeat them. Vorthax leaned forward. Define sufficient force. 2,000 ships, Supreme Leader. 15% of our entire military. And we must bring the planet cracker weapons. If we cannot defeat their fleet, we must be prepared to destroy their colonies, to show them the price of resistance. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. 2,000 ships. It was unprecedented. The largest force the Confederacy had ever assembled for a single campaign. You ask us to commit resources needed to defend our entire empire to crush one planet? Another council member demanded. I'm asking us to end this before it becomes worse, Krovex said. Every day we wait, the humans grow stronger. We must strike now with everything we have and break them completely. Because if we don't... He paused. If we don't, I believe they will eventually strike us. Laughter echoed through the chamber. The idea of a single planet attacking the mighty Confederacy was absurd, ridiculous. Approved, Vorthax said, cutting through the laughter. Assemble the fleet, crush the humans, make an example of them, so horrific that no species will ever dare to resist us again. On Earth, intelligence officers watched the Vraxian buildup with growing concern. Spy satellites in Vraxian space, disguised as asteroids and space debris, sent back images of the massive fleet assembling. 2,000 ships. It was more than anyone had expected. Secretary General Rodriguez called an emergency meeting. Admiral Morrison was there, along with Dr. Kim and the heads of all major militaries. Can we win? Rodriguez asked simply. Admiral Morrison looked at the tactical displays. In a straight fight? No, we have 400 ships now and they're all better than what we had a year ago. But 2,000 against 400. The math doesn't work. We'd lose. Then we don't fight straight, Dr. Kim said. Everyone looked at her. We've been assuming they'd come to us, that we'd fight a defensive battle in our own space just like before. But why do we assume that? Because that's how war works, said a general. They attack. We defend. That's how war worked, Dr. Kim corrected. But humans don't repeat themselves, remember? They expect us to do what we did before, upgrade our weapons, improve our defenses, and wait for them to attack. So we do something completely different. What are you suggesting? Rodriguez asked. Dr. Kim pulled up a star map. We've been working on new FTL technology based on principles we've learned from captured Vraxian ships. Our version is faster but less stable. We can't use it for long journeys, but for short jumps? She smiled. We can jump from here to here. Her finger traced a line from human space to deep inside Vraxian territory. While their fleet is traveling to attack us, we attack them. The room fell silent. It was crazy. It was reckless. It was exactly the kind of thing humans did when cornered. We don't have the forces to occupy Vraxian worlds, an admiral pointed out. We don't need to occupy, Dr. Kim said. We just need to threaten. They're bringing planet crackers to destroy our colonies. We'll bring planet crackers to theirs. They've shown us how the weapons work. We've built our own. While their fleet is busy attacking an empty solar system, we'll be holding their homeworld hostage. An empty solar system? Morrison asked. We evacuate. Everyone. Every person in every colony. We load them onto transports and hide them in deep space, far from any planet or star. The Vraxian fleet will arrive and find nothing but automated defenses. Drones, millions of them. Cheap, disposable, and all programmed to do one thing. Buy time. Time for what? Rodriguez asked, though she was starting to understand. Time for us to force the Vraxians to surrender. They can destroy our empty cities, and our automated defenses, but while they're doing that, we'll have 3 fleets positioned at 3 different Vraxian colonies. We'll give them a choice. Order your invasion fleet to stand down, or we destroy your worlds. All 3 of them. At once. The plan was audacious, insane, brilliant, and very, very human. The casualties if this goes wrong, someone said. If this goes wrong, we're all dead anyway, Doctor, Kim said bluntly. They're coming with 2,000 ships and weapons designed to crack planets. They're not here to conquer us anymore. They're here to exterminate us. So we make sure they understand. If we die, we're taking them with us. Admiral Morrison stood up. I'll lead the strike on the first Vraxian colony. I'll take the second, said another admiral. Third is mine, said a general. Rodriguez looked around the room at the faces of humanity's military leaders. They knew this plan might fail. They knew they might be ordering millions of deaths, but they also knew that doing nothing guaranteed extinction. Make it happen, she said. Show the Vraxians what happens when you teach humans your tactics. The Vraxian armada arrived at the edge of human space in what they expected to be a glorious campaign. 2,000 ships bristling with weapons, shields upgraded to counter human lasers, armor reinforced against kinetic weapons. They were ready for anything. What they found confused them. Where are the defending ships? Krovex demanded. Sensors show. Nothing, Admiral. The system appears almost empty. Wait, detecting thousands of small contacts. They're all around us. On the screens, little dots appeared. Then more dots, then more. Millions of small objects, each one no larger than a fighter craft, suddenly activated and began moving toward the Vraxian fleet. Drones, the tactical officer said. They're all drones. Automated weapons platforms. Destroy them, Krovex ordered. The Vraxian fleet opened fire. The drones began dying by the thousands, but there were so many. For every one destroyed, 10 more appeared from hidden positions among the asteroids, the moons, the cold storage depots in deep space. And the drones were smart. They learned. When Vraxian ships destroyed them with gravitational weapons, the next wave approached from different angles. When shields blocked them, they adapted, swarming together to overwhelm the defenses. They were cheap and disposable, but there were millions of them, and each one carried enough explosive to damage a ship. Where are the human ships? Krovex demanded again. This made no sense. The drones were an annoyance, but where was the real defense? That's when the communication came through. A human face appeared on every Vraxian screen simultaneously. It was Admiral Morrison. Fleet Admiral Krovex, I'm going to save us both some time. Look at these coordinates. She transmitted 3 sets of numbers. Krovex's sensor officer checked them. Admiral, those are Vraxian colonies. New Terra, Vormak, and Kesith Prime. Correct, Morrison said. Right now we have 3 fleets at those locations. Each fleet carries the same planet cracker weapons your fleet is carrying. Each fleet is aimed at a civilian population center. 20 million Vraxians on New Terra, 35 million on Vormak, 50 million on Kesith Prime. All of them are about to die unless you stand down immediately. Krovex felt his blood freeze. You're bluffing. You can't have ships there. We would have detected them. Morrison smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. You taught us to build those planet crackers. Thank you for that, by the way. You also taught us that attacking civilian targets is an acceptable tactic in war, and you taught us that overwhelming force is the only language your Confederacy understands. Well, we've learned our lessons. Now here's your lesson. Humans don't repeat themselves. You came to us 3 times. Each time you expected us to fight the same way. We didn't. We learned. We adapted, and we've made sure you'll never have the chance to repeat your mistakes. If you destroy those colonies, we'll destroy Earth, Krovex shouted. Go ahead, Morrison said calmly. Earth is empty. We evacuated everyone. Every human in the solar system is gone, hidden in deep space where you'll never find them. You can destroy our cities, our monuments, our history, but you can't destroy us. Meanwhile, your people are sitting in cities right now, going to work, raising families, living their lives. And in 30 seconds, they're all going to die unless you power down your weapons and surrender. Krovex's mind raced. This was impossible. Humans couldn't have gotten ships past their sensors. They couldn't have. 20 seconds, Morrison said. You're lying, Krovex said, but his voice shook. What if she wasn't lying? What if humans had developed technology that let them slip past Vraxian sensors? They'd done the impossible twice already. 15 seconds. You know, your Confederacy has a rule. Never negotiate. Never surrender. Never show weakness. That's a stupid rule, Admiral. Humans have a different rule. Do whatever it takes to survive. 10 seconds. Krovex looked at his tactical display. His fleet was already damaged by the drone swarms. Dozens of ships had been destroyed or disabled. And all of this was just automated defenses. The real human fleet was somewhere else, threatening Vraxian civilians. 5 seconds, 4, 3. Stop! Krovex roared. Stop, don't fire, we surrender. The bridge went silent. In 600 years of Vraxian history, no fleet had ever surrendered. Ever. Morrison's face showed no triumph. Just exhaustion. Smart choice. Here's what happens now. You're going to power down all weapons. You're going to disable your FTL drives. Then you're going to wait while we send boarding parties to every single one of your ships. You're going to hand over all your technology, all your star charts, all your intelligence on the Confederacy. And then you're going to go home and tell your council exactly what happened here. And if we refuse, then our fleets at your colonies will fire, and 105 million Vraxians will die. Your choice, Admiral. Make it now. Krovex looked around his bridge. His officers stared at him, waiting for orders. Some looked angry. Some looked scared. All of them looked defeated. Stand down all weapons, he said quietly. Disable the FTL drives. Prepare for boarding. As human ships began appearing, not from human space but from Vraxian space exactly as Morrison had promised, Krovex finally understood what he was facing. Humans didn't just adapt their technology, they adapted their entire way of thinking. They studied their enemy and learned not just how to fight them, but how to think like them, how to predict them, how to beat them at their own game. The Vraxians had taught humans about overwhelming force and civilian targeting. Now humans had used those exact tactics against their teachers. A transmission came in from the Confederacy Council. Supreme Leader Vorthax's face appeared, his features twisted with rage. Krovex, what is the meaning of this? Why have you surrendered? Because they're holding 3 of our colonies hostage, Supreme Leader. Then destroy Earth. Kill them all! Earth is evacuated, empty. They knew we were coming and they prepared. Not by defending, but by attacking. By doing exactly what we would have done if we were them. This is unacceptable. I order you to... With respect, Supreme Leader, I'm no longer taking orders from the Council. I'm taking orders from Admiral Morrison now. Because if I don't, 105 million Vraxians will die, and it will be our fault. We attacked them first. We killed their civilians. We threatened to destroy their planets. They're just following the rules we taught them. Vorthax's face turned an interesting shade of purple. You are a traitor to the Confederacy. Maybe, Krovex said. Or maybe I'm the only one who understands what we're facing. These humans, Supreme Leader, they don't fight like other species. They don't surrender. They don't stay beaten. And most importantly, they learn from every mistake, ours and theirs. We attacked them 3 times. 3 times! And each time they were ready with something we didn't expect. How many more times do you want to try? How many more Vraxians do you want to kill learning a lesson we should have learned the first time? The transmission cut off. Krovex knew his career was over. Probably his life too, eventually. But at least he'd saved 105 million civilians. Morrison's face appeared again. Thank you for making the right choice, Admiral. Now let's talk about peace. The Vraxian Confederacy was collapsing. It happened slowly at first, then all at once. The news of the third defeat spread through Vraxian space like poison. 2,000 ships, the pride of the Confederacy, had surrendered without destroying a single human world. Fleet Admiral Krovex had handed over military secrets, technology, and strategic intelligence to a species that had been unknown 2 years ago. The subject species heard the news and acted. The Kelvorians were first. They'd been conquered 300 years ago, and they'd waited patiently for any sign of weakness. Within a week of the surrender, they declared independence. Their military, small but well-trained, seized control of their homeworld and 3 colonies. The Vraxian response was swift but ineffective. The fleet sent to crush the rebellion was ambushed by ships using human-designed weapons. Lasers and kinetic cannons tore through Vraxian shields. The fleet retreated after losing half its ships. After that, it was like a dam breaking. The Torvine declared independence. The Xanathar, the Breviks, the Morganites. Within 3 months, 12 of the 47 subject species had declared independence. and another 8 were in open rebellion. The Confederacy's economy, built on the labor and resources of conquered worlds, began to collapse. Trade routes were disrupted. Mining operations stopped. Food shipments failed to arrive. On the Vraxian homeworld, rationing began for the first time in 500 years. In the council chambers, the mood was desperate. Supreme Leader Vorthax looked older than his 600 years. The other council members argued constantly, blaming each other for the disaster. "We should negotiate with the humans," said one council member. "They've proven we can't defeat them militarily." "Negotiate?" Vorthax's voice was quiet but dangerous. "Negotiate with a species that has humiliated us? That has inspired our subjects to rebel? That has broken our empire? What choice do we have? Every day we waste, we grow weaker." "I'll tell you what choice we have," Vorthax said. He activated a holographic display. "For the past 6 months, our scientists have been working on a project. Something we've never needed before. Something we swore we'd never build." The hologram showed a massive weapon, larger than a battle station, surrounded by dozens of ships. "A star killer," Vorthax said. "A weapon that can destabilize a sun and cause it to go supernova. This weapon, placed in the Sol system, will destroy not just Earth, but every planet, every colony, every human in their space. They will have 3 hours to evacuate, which isn't nearly enough time. Everything they are, everything they've built, everyone they love, all of it will burn." The chamber fell silent. The Star Killer was a theoretical weapon, discussed in military academies but never built. It was considered too dangerous, too final. Using it meant accepting mutual destruction, because the energy release would damage the attacking fleet as well. "You're talking about genocide," a council member said quietly. "I'm talking about survival," Vorthax replied. "The humans have shown they will never surrender. They will continue to grow stronger, continue to inspire our subjects to rebel, continue to destroy us piece by piece. We have one option left: make them surrender by threatening everything they care about, their homeworld, their species, their very star. And if they don't surrender, then we activate the weapon. Yes, billions will die. Yes, it's monstrous, but it will end the threat. And it will show every species in the galaxy what happens when you defy the Confederacy. The human fleets will retaliate. They'll destroy our colonies, let them. We'll rebuild, but without Earth, without their industrial base, without their homeworld, the humans will be scattered refugees. They won't be able to sustain their technology or their military. In 10 years, they'll be extinct. In 20, no one will remember they existed." Another council member stood up. "This is madness. We're talking about murdering billions of civilians." "They would do the same to us," Vorthax said. "They've already proven that. They held our colonies hostage. They threatened to kill millions of Vraxians. The only difference is that we're going to follow through." The vote was close, but it passed. The Vraxian Confederacy would build its doomsday fleet. They would bring the Star Killer to Earth. They would give the humans one chance to surrender completely and unconditionally, dismantling their military and accepting Vraxian rule. If the humans refused, the weapon would fire. It was the desperate gamble of a dying empire, and everyone in the room knew it. But desperation makes people do terrible things. Earth's intelligence services picked up the construction of the Doomsday Fleet within days. Spy satellites watched as the Vraxians built the massive Star Killer. Scientists analyzed the design and confirmed humanity's worst fears. "It'll work," Dr. Sarah Kim said at the emergency briefing. Her face was pale. "If they get that weapon into our solar system and activate it, we have maybe 3 hours before the sun explodes. Not enough time to evacuate even a fraction of our population. Can we destroy it?" Admiral Morrison asked. "It's heavily shielded and surrounded by 800 warships. The largest fleet we can assemble is 400 ships, and that's stripping every defensive position. Even if we won the battle, which isn't guaranteed, we'd take heavy casualties. And if even one ship gets through with the weapon, everyone dies." Secretary General Rodriguez finished. She looked around the room at humanity's leaders. "Options? We could surrender," someone suggested. "Accept Vraxian rule. At least we'd be alive, would we?" Admiral Morrison asked. "They've lost 70% of their empire because of us. They're not going to accept a simple surrender. They'll want revenge. They'll want to make an example of us so horrific that no other species will dare to rebel." "We could run," another voice said. "Load as many people as we can onto ships and scatter across the galaxy. And leave 8 billion people to die?" Rodriguez shook her head. No, if we run, we're admitting we can't win. We're admitting humanity's best strategy is to hide and hope they don't find us. Dr. Kim looked at the analysis of the Star Killer. Her mind was racing, thinking through possibilities, discarding ideas, looking for anything that might work. Humans had won 3 times by doing the unexpected, by learning from their enemies, by adapting faster than anyone thought possible. What would the Vraxians expect them to do? They'd expect panic. They'd expect desperate military strikes. They'd expect either surrender or a final suicidal attack. So what should humanity do instead? An idea began to form. It was crazy. It was dangerous. It might not even be possible. But it was unexpected, and that meant it might work. I have an idea, she said slowly, but you're all going to hate it. Everyone looked at her. The Vraxians think they understand us now. They've fought us 3 times. They've studied our tactics. They think they know how we think. But there's one thing they don't know. One thing we haven't shown them yet. What's that? Rodriguez asked. Infiltration, not of their territory, of their society, their culture, their very civilization. She pulled up images of Vraxian citizens. For 2 years we've been studying them. Their biology, their psychology, their social structures. We've captured thousands of them, interviewed them, learned everything we could about how they think and how they live. What if we use that knowledge not to fight them, but to become them? You're talking about spies, an intelligence officer said. I'm talking about thousands of spies. Tens of thousands. We take volunteers, give them biological modifications, train them to act and think like Vraxians, and insert them into Vraxian society. Not as saboteurs, not yet, but as ordinary citizens. Workers, teachers, engineers, soldiers. We become part of their civilization. That's impossible, someone said. They'd detect us. Genetic scans, neural patterns, would they? Dr. Kim pulled up research files. We've been working on this for months. Biological camouflage at the genetic level, neural pattern mimicry, pheromone matching. It's possible. Difficult, but possible. And if we can pull it off, if we can infiltrate their entire society, then when they bring that doomsday fleet to Earth, we won't threaten to destroy their colonies. Then what will we threaten? Morrison asked, though she was starting to understand. We'll threaten to destroy them from within. We'll show them that we're not just in their space stations or their military bases. We're everywhere. We're in their food supply, their water treatment facilities, their power grids, their government buildings, their schools and hospitals and homes. We're not an external threat anymore. We've become internal. We've become inseparable from their civilization itself. The room was silent as everyone processed this. It was audacious. It was terrifying. It was the kind of plan that could only work once because after it was revealed, the enemy would never trust anyone again. You're talking about becoming a virus, Rodriguez said, infecting their entire society. Yes, and making sure they know that if they kill us, they kill themselves. The Star Killer becomes useless because destroying Earth means we trigger failsafes that destroy them. It's mutually assured destruction, but on a societal level rather than a military one. How long would this take? Morrison asked. We have 3 weeks before their fleet is ready. It's not enough time to infiltrate completely, but it might be enough to infiltrate the key systems. Military command, government, infrastructure control. If we can position our people in critical locations and make the Vraxians aware of it at the right moment, we can force a surrender without firing a shot. And if we fail? Someone asked. Then we fail spectacularly and the sun explodes and everyone dies. But we're facing that outcome anyway if we do nothing. Rodriguez looked around the room. This plan requires volunteers who might never come home. It requires people willing to give up their identities, their families, their very humanity, to become Vraxian. Who would do that? Admiral Morrison stood up. I would. After the Vraxians killed those 243 people at Proxima Station, I promised myself I'd do whatever it took to stop them. If that means becoming one of them to save humanity, then that's what I'll do. I'll go too, Dr. Kim said. I've spent 2 years learning how to kill them. Time to learn how to infiltrate them. Around the room, others stood up. Military officers, scientists, engineers, intelligence operatives. People who understood that this might be humanity's last chance. Then we proceed, Rodriguez said. May God help us all. The transformation process was brutal. Volunteers underwent genetic modification, bone restructuring, neural rewiring. Their faces changed. Their bodies changed. Even their thoughts began to change as they learned to think like Vraxians, to react like Vraxians, to be Vraxian in every way except their loyalty. Dr. Kim, now going by the Vraxian name Kirvana, looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized what she saw. Purple skin, different bone structure, eyes that could see in different spectrums. When she spoke, it was in the grinding, rock-like Vraxian language. "How do you feel?" asked the technician monitoring her transformation. "Wrong," she said. "Like I'm wearing someone else's skin. Because I am. That feeling will fade. The neural modifications will help you think like them, act like them. Within a few weeks, being Vraxian will feel natural. And if it feels too natural? If I forget who I really am?" The technician handed her a small device no larger than a grain of rice. "This is your anchor. It's implanted in your brain, hidden from any scan the Vraxians have. If you ever doubt who you are, if you ever feel like you're losing yourself, you activate this. It'll remind you that you're human, that you're Sarah Kim, that you volunteered for this mission." She took the device. "How many of us are there?" 50,000 volunteers, all undergoing the same transformation, all preparing to infiltrate Vraxian society. It's the largest intelligence operation in human history. 50,000 people, 50,000 humans giving up everything to become the enemy. Some would be discovered. Some would be killed. Some might actually forget who they were and become truly Vraxian. But if it worked, if they could infiltrate deeply enough, they might save 8 billion lives. "When do we deploy?" she asked. "Tomorrow. You'll be inserted into Vraxian civilian populations across their territory. Your cover story is that you're a refugee from one of the rebellious colonies. You'll find work, build a life, and wait for the signal. It might be days. It might be weeks. But when the signal comes, you'll activate your mission protocols and show the Vraxians that humans aren't just in space. We're everywhere," Kim finished. She looked at her Vraxian face in the mirror one last time, then turned away. "Let's get started. We've got a war to win from the inside." 3 weeks after the infiltration began, the Vraxian Doomsday Fleet was ready. 800 warships surrounded the Starkiller, a weapon so large it had to be towed by a dozen ships working together. The weapon looked like a massive spike covered in power conduits and exotic matter containment fields. When activated, it would inject unstable particles into a star's core, causing a chain reaction that would lead to supernova. Fleet Admiral Krovex stood on the bridge of his new flagship. After his surrender at the third battle, he'd been stripped of rank and imprisoned. But the Confederacy needed experienced commanders for the Doomsday Fleet, and Krovex knew humans better than anyone. So they'd given him back his rank and one last mission: force humanity's surrender or destroy them completely. He didn't feel proud. He felt sick, but he had his orders. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his tactical officer said. Krovex nodded. "Activate FTL drives. Destination Sol system. Time to end this war." The massive fleet jumped through space. When they emerged at the edge of the solar system, they found what they expected: a human defensive fleet. 400 ships arranged in battle formation around Earth. But the humans didn't attack. They just waited. "Broadcast the ultimatum," Krovex ordered. A message went out on all frequencies in all languages. "People of Earth, this is Fleet Admiral Krovex of the Vraxian Confederacy. We have brought a weapon capable of destroying your sun. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. Dismantle your military. Submit to Vraxian authority. Agree to Vraxian rule for 1,000 years. If you refuse, we will activate the Starkiller, and every living thing in this system will die. You have 24 hours. The response came immediately, but it wasn't what Krovex expected. Instead of panic or defiance or negotiation, there was laughter. A single transmission from the human fleet, broadcast so every Vraxian ship could hear it. "You still don't understand, do you?" It was Admiral Morrison's voice. Though Krovex didn't know she was actually sitting on a transport ship far from the battle, having given command to others before her infiltration mission. "Understand what?" Krovex demanded. "You think you've cornered us? You think you've finally found a weapon we can't counter? You think we're going to panic and surrender? But here's what you don't understand. Humans don't repeat themselves. We don't make the same mistake twice, and we've been learning from you for 2 years now. Your weapons cannot reach the Starkiller before we activate it," Krovex said. "Your fleet is too small, your technology too limited. Who said anything about our fleet? The voice was amused now, almost playful. You're thinking about this all wrong. You're thinking about military tactics and space battles. But we learned something from you in our last fight. We learned that the best weapon isn't always a gun. Sometimes it's information. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's the enemy's own paranoia. What are you talking about? Let me show you something. Every screen on every Vraxian ship suddenly changed. The tactical displays, the communication systems, even personal devices. Everything showed the same image. The Vraxian homeworld. Not from orbit. From the surface. From inside the capital city. The image was taken from the Confederacy Council chambers. It showed Supreme Leader Vorthax sitting at his desk working on reports. He was alone, unaware he was being filmed. That's a live feed, the human voice said. Right now, real time, we're inside your most secure facility, filming your Supreme Leader without his knowledge. Want to see more? The images began multiplying. Vraxian military bases, government buildings, power plants, water treatment facilities, food processing centers, schools, hospitals, ordinary homes where Vraxian families were having dinner. And in each image, one figure stood out, one person who subtly didn't belong. They were doing ordinary things, working, eating, walking, talking. But each one turned to face the camera and smiled. Thousands of images, tens of thousands. Humans disguised as Vraxians embedded throughout their entire civilization. My name is Sarah Kim, said a woman in one of the images. She was speaking Vraxian perfectly, standing in what appeared to be a military command center. 2 weeks ago, I was a human scientist. Today, I'm Kirvana, a tactical analyst for the Vraxian Third Fleet. I report directly to Admiral Zorvex. I've been entering data into your military computers for 8 days now. Want to guess what I've been doing? Another image. Another human. I'm Lieutenant James Park. I'm currently working in the Life Support Control Center for the Vraxian homeworld. I have access to the atmospheric processors, the water purification systems, the power grid, all of them. Another image. I'm Dr. Maria Santos. I'm a food inspector for the Vraxian Agricultural Ministry. I oversee the safety testing for 40% of the food consumed on the homeworld. More images. More voices. 50,000 humans all revealing themselves simultaneously. Engineers, technicians, soldiers, teachers, workers. They were everywhere. In every critical system, every important facility, every position that mattered. On his bridge, Krovex felt his blood turn to ice. This was impossible. Genetic scanners should have detected them. Security protocols should have caught them. They couldn't have infiltrated this deeply, this quickly. But they had. Here's what you're going to do. The original human voice said, you're going to power down that star killer. You're going to disable your weapons. You're going to turn your fleet around and go home. And you're going to surrender. Not because we're threatening your colonies this time. Because we're threatening you. We'll find your infiltrators, Krovex said, but his voice shook. We'll execute them all. Really? You're going to find 50,000 people hidden among billions of Vraxians? People who look exactly like you, sound exactly like you, have the same genetics and neural patterns as you? We've spent 2 years learning how to be you. We're not just wearing disguises. We've become Vraxian. You can't find us. And even if you could, you'd have to shut down your entire civilization to do it. Food production, power generation, water treatment, military command. We're inside all of it, a new voice spoke. It was Supreme Leader Vorthax. The transmission was being broadcast from the council chambers. This is a trick. Computer simulations. Artificial images. You're trying to make us panic. Is that what you think? Dr. Kim, Kirvana, said from her position in the military command center. Then let me prove it's real. She reached out and pressed a button on the console in front of her. I just shut down the defensive satellites around the homeworld. All of them. They'll restart in 30 seconds, but for 30 seconds your planet is defenseless. How's that for proof? On Vraxian homeworld, alarms began screaming. Defensive satellites went dark. The council chambers erupted in panic. Vorthax's face went from purple to nearly white. That's just one of us, the human voice continued. Just one demonstrating what we can do. Now imagine all 50,000 of us activating at once. We could shut down your life support. Contaminate your food supply. Disable your military networks. Crash your economy. We could make your entire civilization collapse in days. Not by attacking from outside, By destroying you from within. Krovex looked at his tactical displays. His fleet was powerful. His Starkiller could destroy the human homeworld. But what good was any of that if human agents could shut down his homeworld's life support? If they could poison the water supply? If they could disable the military command systems? You're bluffing, he said weakly. You wouldn't kill billions of civilians. Why not? You were about to do exactly that to us. You brought a weapon to murder everyone in this solar system. You gave us 24 hours to surrender or die. So we learned from you. We built a weapon that makes your Starkiller look like a child's toy. Our weapon isn't a machine, it's people. It's 50,000 humans who have infiltrated your society so completely that you'll never be able to trust anyone again. Another voice joined the transmission. It was from the Vraxian homeworld. This is Counselor Mex Varna. I've served on the council for 200 years. Or at least you thought I did. My real name is Alexander Chen. I've been feeding you false intelligence for 3 months now. Every military decision you've made recently was based on data I provided. How does it feel knowing your entire strategy has been guided by a human? The council chambers erupted in chaos. Vorthax was screaming orders, demanding security sweep the entire building, demanding genetic scans of everyone. But it was too late. The damage was done. The paranoia was spreading. Here's the truth, the human voice said. You can activate that Starkiller. You can destroy Earth and kill 8 billion humans. But the moment you do, we activate our fail-safes. Every human agent in your civilization will begin sabotage operations. Your life support fails. Your food gets contaminated. Your power grids shut down. Your military computers crash. Within a week, your civilization will be in chaos. Within a month, billions of Vraxians will be dead. Not from our weapons, from your own infrastructure turning against you. This is terrorism, Krovex said. No, Admiral, this is war. You taught us how to wage it. You showed us that civilian targets are acceptable. You demonstrated that overwhelming force is the only language you understand. You educated us in the tactics of extinction-level warfare. We're just better students than you expected. Vorthax's voice came through, shaking with rage. If we surrender, what guarantee do we have that you'll remove your infiltrators? None. That's the point. We're not removing them. They're staying exactly where they are, forever. They're going to live as Vraxians, work as Vraxians, die as Vraxians. Their children will be Vraxian. Their grandchildren will be Vraxian. In 3 generations, nobody will remember they were once human. They've sacrificed their identities, their families, their humanity itself to save Earth. And they're staying in position as insurance. If you ever attack us again, if you ever threaten human space, if you ever even think about building another doomsday weapon, they activate. And your civilization dies. The implications crashed down on Krovex like a physical weight. Humans weren't just threatening them now. They were threatening them forever. There would always be human agents embedded in Vraxian society. Always a knife at their throat. Always the knowledge that their entire civilization existed at human mercy. You've made it impossible for us to trust our own people, Vorthax said. Yes. Just like you made it impossible for us to trust that you wouldn't attack us. You wanted to teach us fear. Congratulations. We learned, and we're teaching it right back to you. Krovex looked at his crew. Were any of them human agents? Was his tactical officer secretly working for Earth? His helmsman? His communications officer? How would he ever know? How would anyone in the Confederacy ever know? The human voice softened slightly. We don't want to destroy you, we never did. We just wanted to be left alone. You attacked us 3 times, each time we defended ourselves. Each time you came back with more force. So we had to show you that force isn't enough. That overwhelming military power isn't enough. That you can't defeat an enemy who's willing to become you. What do you want? Krovex asked. Peace. Real peace. Permanent peace. Here's the deal. You dismantle the Starkiller. You withdraw all military forces from human space and from the space of any species that wants independence from the Confederacy. You agree to a mutual non-aggression treaty that lasts 1,000 years. You allow independent observers to verify that you're complying. And in exchange, our infiltrators will simply live their lives. They won't sabotage anything. They won't attack anyone. They'll just be ordinary Vraxian citizens, unless you break the treaty. Then they activate. And if we refuse? Vorthax asked. Then we activate them now. Right now. We shut down your life support, contaminate your water, disable your power, and watch your civilization collapse. Your choice, Supreme Leader. Make it now. The Confederacy Council held an emergency session. The debate was fierce but short. Some council members wanted to fight, to call the human bluff, to refuse on principle, but most understood the reality. They had lost. Not in battle, not to superior weapons. They'd lost because humans had infiltrated their society so completely that the Vraxians could never feel safe again. Supreme Leader Vorthax looked older than his 600 years when he made the final decision. We accept your terms. The Confederacy surrenders. Power down the Starkiller. Withdraw all forces. We will sign your treaty. The formal surrender took 3 days to complete. The Vraxian Doomsday Fleet turned around and went home. The Starkiller was disassembled under human supervision. The subject species who wanted independence were granted it. The Vraxian Confederacy, which had ruled 47 systems for 600 years, was reduced to 12 systems and a promise never to expand again. And throughout Vraxian space, 50,000 human agents settled into their new lives. Some had families, some took jobs they enjoyed, some rose to positions of power in Vraxian government and military. They lived and worked and eventually died as Vraxians. Their children never knew their parents had once been human. Their grandchildren wouldn't believe it if told. They were the insurance policy, the guarantee, the promise that humanity would never be threatened again. 5 years after the war ended, Secretary General Elena Rodriguez stood before the Galactic Council. It was a new organization, formed after the Confederacy's collapse. Representatives from 73 species attended, including the Vraxians. The war between humanity and the Vraxian Confederacy taught us many lessons, Rodriguez said. The most important is this. We don't have to be enemies. The Vraxians attacked us because they thought we were weak. We defended ourselves because we had no choice. Both sides escalated because neither side understood the other. She looked at the Vraxian delegation. Former Fleet Admiral Krovex was there, now serving as the Vraxian ambassador. He met her eyes and nodded slightly. The Vraxians taught us about warfare, Rodriguez continued. They taught us about tactics and strategy and the price of aggression. We learned those lessons well. Too well, perhaps. But we also learned something else. We learned that the best victory isn't destroying your enemy, it's making them your ally. She pulled up images of reconstruction efforts. Human engineers working alongside Vraxian engineers to rebuild damaged colonies. Human teachers helping to reform Vraxian education. Human doctors treating Vraxian patients. The humans who infiltrated Vraxian society didn't just threaten destruction. They also built bridges. They showed that humans and Vraxians can work together, live together, prosper together. Today, the Vraxian Confederacy is becoming a Vraxian Federation, a democracy, a society that values cooperation over conquest. Krovex stood up to speak. 5 years ago, I would have said humans were a plague to be eradicated. Today, I say they are the best thing that ever happened to the Vraxian people. They didn't just defeat us in war. They defeated the worst parts of our culture, our arrogance, our cruelty, our belief that might makes right. They showed us a better way by becoming us and showing us what we could be. There was applause from the assembled species. Not everyone trusted the new peace. Not everyone believed it would last. But it was a start. After the session, Rodriguez met privately with Krovex. How many of our infiltrators have you identified? She asked. Krovex laughed, though it wasn't entirely a happy sound. Honestly, we've stopped looking. Every time we think we've found one, we realize we can't be sure. Your people are too good at being us. And the truth is, they've been good citizens. They contribute to society. They pay taxes. They raise children. Some of them are genuinely making our civilization better. It's easier to just accept that they're there and move on. That was the idea, Rodriguez said. Make you paranoid enough to never attack us again, but integrated enough that removing them would hurt you more than help you. It worked. I hate that it worked, but it did. Krovex paused. Can I ask you something? The 50,000 infiltrators. Do they ever regret what they did? Giving up their humanity to save Earth? Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. Some do. We get messages occasionally, through secure channels. Some of them miss being human. Some of them have forgotten what it was like. Some have families now, Vraxian spouses, Vraxian children, and they can never tell their loved ones the truth. It's lonely. It's hard. But they volunteered. They knew what they were giving up, and they do it again because they saved 8 billion lives. Heroes, Krovex said softly. Yes, heroes who will never be recognized. Heroes who gave up everything, including the ability to be called heroes. They stood in silence for a moment. Two former enemies who had learned to respect each other through war. Your species has a saying, Krovex said. Humans don't repeat themselves. I've thought about that a lot. You fought us 3 times, and each time you used completely different tactics. You learned from every engagement and evolved faster than we could adapt. That's terrifying, but also admirable. You attacked us 3 times, Rodriguez replied. You repeated the same mistakes over and over. You underestimated us. You relied on overwhelming force. You thought we'd break. And each time, you learned nothing from your failures. That's why you lost. Have we learned now? Krovex asked. I hope so. Because if you haven't, if you ever threaten humanity again, we won't infiltrate your society next time. We'll become your society. Every Vraxian will wonder if their neighbor, their co-worker, their family member is secretly human. You'll tear yourselves apart with paranoia, and we won't have to fire a single shot. Krovex believed her. That was the truly frightening thing. He absolutely believed that humans were capable of doing exactly that. We've learned, he assured her. The Confederacy made a mistake. We won't repeat it. Because we finally understand. Humans don't repeat themselves. But they never forget either, and they will always ensure their enemies don't repeat their mistakes, not because they're merciful, but because they make it impossible. Rodriguez smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. Now you're learning. Maybe there's hope for galactic peace after all. In a small Vraxian town on the colony world of Keseth Prime, a woman named Kirvana taught chemistry at the local school. She had a husband, 2 children, and a small house near the river. Her neighbors liked her. Her students respected her. No one suspected that she'd once been human. Sometimes late at night she would activate the tiny device in her brain, the anchor that reminded her who she really was. She would lie in bed next to her Vraxian husband, look at the purple-skinned faces of her sleeping children, and remember that her real name was Sarah Kim, that she'd once been human, that she'd volunteered to give up everything to save Earth. The memories hurt. They always hurt. She missed Earth. She missed coffee and sunsets and speaking English. She missed being human. But when she looked at her children, she didn't regret her choice. They were alive because she'd made this sacrifice. Earth was alive. Humanity was thriving, and the Vraxian children she taught would grow up in a better society, one influenced by the values of the 50,000 humans who'd become Vraxian to save both species. She turned off the anchor and went back to sleep, dreaming of both worlds, the one she'd left behind and the one she'd chosen to protect. Across the galaxy, 50,000 other former humans did the same. They lived their lives. They kept their secrets, and they stood ready, always ready to activate if humanity was ever threatened again. The Vraxians had learned their lesson. Humans don't repeat themselves, and they make absolutely certain their enemies don't get the chance to repeat theirs either.